about 10 minutes late. I'm not actually sure who's watching yet. I've been in a bit of a rush this afternoon. I have no childcare, so I'm trying to juggle things a little bit. Anyway, I did see a message from someone saying that she had lost 5 pounds this week, which is great, and not able to join us. But if you have questions after this is posted, please feel free to ask. I will be looking at the page probably a few times this week. So if anyone needs help with anything, just let me know. Welcome to week 2. So it's been a bit of a scramble to get things ready. There's one handout that still needs to go up. It'll be the same format as last week. What I'd like to do is I'm going to hold these up again. And you can either open it on your screen. It's been uploaded to documents. If you just look in documents in the Facebook group, and if you want to look at it at the same time, or if you want to print it out, you can print it out and look at it that way. Or if you want to just listen or just take notes, whatever works for you, it works. We also have a handout. Then I'll be talking about the handout at the end, and that will be our homework for week 2. So I'm very curious to know if anyone else has any results they'd like to share, or issues or questions. And if you want to post it while I'm talking right now, I will be able to see it and I can comment back in real time. So, welcome to week 2 of 10 weeks to total wellness. This is okay. So I'm just going to go over the outline one more time, just reminding you this is a process. So we have section 1, managing blood sugar 101. This is week 2 of managing blood sugar. And then section 3 will start next week. We'll be starting to look at ketosis and starting to push ourselves to going into ketosis, which is the fat burning mode. And that will be weeks 3 to 7. And then weeks 8 to 10, we will be combining blood sugar balancing with cyclical ketosis and intermittent fasting. And I will obviously talk about that more later on. So section 3 will be the balancing act and figuring out how to do managing blood sugar and ketosis and mixing it into your life and making it a practical thing for you to do on a regular basis. So, slide 2, here we go. I just wanted to review last week's homework, and if you have any questions, please let me know. So for last week, we did, the first thing I asked you to do was to eat within 30 minutes of waking up. The reason for this is very important, and it's because you want to beat your body's response to dumping sugar into your system and stopping a flood of insulin from going in. And I will just give you an example. I saw a patient last week. I had put her on, I did this with her, although some more modifications than just the timing of eating. She is diabetic and lost 10 pounds in the first, it was actually 3 weeks. She lost 10 pounds in the first 3 weeks. And one of the things that I had her do was to record her blood sugars. And something interesting that turned up was when she checked her blood sugar right after she woke up, we saw a lower blood sugar than when she waited an hour and a half and checked her blood sugar. I think it was about 20 points higher. And so what happened was she waited too long to eat, because it's obviously she was fasting, so she still hadn't had anything to eat. And the longer she waited, the higher her blood sugar got. So that is interesting to note, and is what will happen to you if you wait too long to eat. Your body will try and compensate on its own rather than you trying to control the blood sugar and being even all the time, which is what you want. And as you can see from one person this week, that they've lost 5 pounds, just by changing the times will improve things. The second thing we talked about was eating between 2 and 2.5 hours apart throughout the day, from waking until bedtime. And again, the same thing. We're trying to prevent the flush of insulin from being dumped, or flood of insulin from being dumped into the bloodstream. So we had, if the blood sugar either drops too high or drops too low, then we have that same thing happen. The blood sugar rises, the insulin rises, and the higher the insulin, the harder it is to lose weight, harder it is to lose fat. So that was the second really important thing to do, and to pay attention to that. Another thing I asked you to do was always to include fat in your meals. Fat is the only thing that does not stimulate an insulin response. And so when we have our macronutrients balanced in a different way, and by macronutrients, I mean protein, fats, and carbohydrates. So we tend normally to have higher levels of proteins and carbohydrates in our diet and lower amounts of fat. So my encouragement is for you to try and shift that so that your fat goes up, your carbs go down, and your proteins maybe stay the same or go down a little bit. The next thing I asked you to do was to count sugar, or to look at sugar in your processed foods. I wasn't asking you to avoid it, but just to make sure that you know 4 grams of sugar is equal to a teaspoon. And that, I honestly believe, is one of the most important things our society could know. I always, when I'm thinking about how much sugar is in a packaged food, I think like, so for example, we have yogurt, we have sugar yogurt, we have fruit yogurt. Say we have a strawberry yogurt. That yogurt is probably going to have about 19 grams of sugar in it. So that's close to 5 teaspoons. If I were to have a drink, if I were to have tea or coffee or water or an iced tea or something like that, I don't think I would ever think about putting 5 teaspoons of sugar in it. I think it's easier to think about when it's in a drink, because you can just see how clear the rest of it is and how much sugar you're just dumping into your drink. So it kind of wakes you up to have more common sense about sugar. I think a little education about that goes a really long way. And I encourage you to tell everybody you know about that. I taught a sugar class to my son's kindergarten class a couple years ago. And I literally heard from parents, I was still hearing from them 6 months later, that their kids, every time they went to the grocery store, were looking at the labels and counting sugar. And it was changing people's purchasing habits, which I think is great. I think the more we know, always the better. So that was the next component of that. So now we have, this was actually, one of the slides got left off last time, and it was the second part. I had included it in the live class last week, but it got missed from the webinar online. So I'm going to talk about it now. We have, at the bottom of our homework, you can see take MCT oil and take magnesium. So if we look, at MCT oil, sorry, I'm looking at where I am here. This is the next slide about MCT oil. MCT oil stands for medium chain triglycerides. It comes from coconut oil. And coconut oil has all kinds of different fats in it. They have different chemical configurations. And one of them is medium chain triglycerides. And those MCTs, or medium chain triglycerides, actually go right into your cell and are used as fuel right away. They don't have to be converted into anything else, which is different from what happens with sugar. And they can go right into making energy. Something that I love about MCT oil is that it can help with blood sugar balancing and insulin balancing. Because it's fat, it doesn't stimulate an insulin response. And you don't burn the sugar that you have in your bloodstream so much because you're using the fat. And so your blood sugar doesn't vacillate as much when you take it. It stays more even, and it can stay more even at a lower level. And when it stays more even at a lower level, our insulin also stays more even at a lower level. And we have less insulin. We don't store fat in the same way. So that is one of the reasons why I think MCT oil is great. I think everybody should take it. I take it. I've been taking it for almost 2 years now. And so besides doing those two lowering effects, you may notice weight loss just by taking MCT oil, because as your insulin goes down, insulin also keeps our water level up in our body. And as our insulin drops, our kidneys change the way they process electrolytes. And so you end up dropping a lot of electrolytes when you have lower insulin. And so a lot of the water weight you store gets dumped. And in fact, when you first start changing your diet like this, usually that is what's happening, not necessarily the fat is coming out yet. It's usually water weight that you maybe have been holding on to for years and years. And water weight, depending on the person, could weigh up to 10, even possibly 15 pounds. For most people, it's common about 5 pounds of water weight. And what you'll notice is that your body looks a little more tight. You can see your muscles a little more, depending on how much fat you have. Your cellulite may look a little less if you have cellulite. And so it just looks a little nicer. MCT oil will help increase endurance. And you'll notice more say you go for a run, or you go for a long walk or hike or something, and you may feel more tired at the beginning, but as you continue, you'll notice that your energy increases and that you have more stamina. You also have better recovery. So besides providing energy, helping to lose weight, and good with endurance, MCT oil helps to build ketones in your blood so that your body can burn more fat and be in the fat zone rather than in the sugar zone. So we also have a link for the products that I like to use in the Facebook group. So you can see what kind of MCT oil we like here at Wellness Architecture. And one thing I will also say is that I have tried lots of different kinds of MCT oil, and I've settled on the one that we use at our office. And that is because there are different kinds of MCTs, and different kinds. Some may be more quick acting with energy, some may be more slow acting, and this one has a combination, and it makes you feel more even keel throughout the day. So that's why I like it. The next slide is about magnesium. So MCT oil relates to blood sugar because it helps to lower insulin levels and lower blood sugar. So magnesium also helps with blood sugar management. It is the most common mineral deficiency in our population. It's also the most abundantly used mineral in our body. And so we have all kinds of problems that are caused by magnesium deficiency. And I could probably count about 10 different drugs used to treat mineral deficiency or magnesium deficiency symptoms. And unfortunately, a lot of people who suffer from a lot of different things could be easily remedied if we just were to fix the mineral deficiency. And I'm just going to read off the list here. So we have blood sugar regulation, cravings, heart palpitations, arrhythmias, muscle tension, workout recovery, time is less, restless leg can be solved by magnesium, headaches, migraines, sleep can be improved, insomnia can be improved, anxiety, detoxification. Magnesium is used in between 700 and 800 reactions that we know of in the body. The list that I mentioned goes on and on and on and on. The benefits are many. A lot of people say, oh, can I overdose in magnesium? The only thing that will happen if you overdose is that you will have diarrhea. So your body will get rid of the excess. You don't really need to worry about that. And of course, if you have diarrhea, you're probably not going to keep taking more and more. So magnesium is really important because it unlocks contractions. And so we have muscles in our body that move everything, literally. You know, we have to move. You have tear ducts that have muscles. You have sphincters from your stomach to your small intestine that have muscles. You have your whole GI tract has muscles. Your whole cardiovascular system has muscles. They're all different kinds of muscles. And then, of course, your muscles are muscles. And so every muscle needs magnesium to unlock a contraction. And if you don't have that, that doesn't happen. So magnesium is incredibly important. And another thing to know about magnesium is that there are all kinds of magnesiums that you can buy off the shelf at the drugstore, at Whole Foods, at a health food store or whatever. The one problem with those, and something I discovered a few years ago, is a special kind of magnesium that doesn't do this. But what most magnesiums do is that they are bound to something like, you probably heard of magnesium citrate or magnesium carbonate or glycinate or whatever it is. And so, as an example, I used to use magnesium glycinate with my patients for years and years, and I had good results with it. The one thing, so say I would give 10, I could give 10, up to 10 capsules to someone, which would cause diarrhea for most people. And the most magnesium you would get in that is actually 50 grams of elemental magnesium. So in the kind that I use a special liquid, and you can get 400 milligrams in a teaspoon of elemental, and you don't get diarrhea from it. So when people become incredibly deficient because it's not in our food, because of the farming practices we use, we're not able to get the levels back up so that our bodies can function properly. And you don't really know what you don't know until you get it. It makes an enormous difference. And the link to that will also be in the Facebook group. So that was the second part after MC2L, the part that I omitted on the live webinar. So if you weren't at the live class last week, that's the part that you got that you got skipped, unfortunately. So anyway, there the information is today. I apologize. So now the next slide, into the content for this week. And one of the things I said last week was I wanted to leave the weeks open. I don't want to publish what we're going to do each week because I want to have the flexibility to change depending on the need for people. If people are having a harder time with something or taking longer to get into ketosis, I want to be able to slow things down. And one thing I had decided to talk about this week was food sensitivities, but I would rather that you just get flooded with one kind of information, you learn it really well, and then we move to the next one. So we are just going to talk about insulin today and tracking your progress, and then I'll give you the homework for week 2. So we have our next slide. Ooh. What is the deal with insulin? So why is insulin so important? It probably seems like I'm obsessed with the word insulin. So insulin has two main jobs. insulin is a hormone that I think should be talked about way more than blood sugar is blood sugar. We talk about blood sugar. I guess I talk about blood sugar a lot. Not everyone does. But in conjunction with blood sugar, insulin needs to be talked about a little more and understood a little more. So insulin is the response. So the pancreas puts out three different main things. One of them is insulin. One is glucagon, which we talked about last week. It does the opposite of what insulin does. I'll say that once again in a second. And the third thing is digestive enzymes. That's a big thing that the pancreas puts out. So insulin is your body's response to sugar. And the more sugar, the more insulin our pancreas puts out. So if we have, if we've just had a Slurpee from 7-Eleven, our body's going to dump a whole lot of insulin. Insulin's job is to act like a key to all the cells, and when it binds to the cell, it essentially opens a little door, letting sugar in. And then the sugar is supposed to be funneled into a process of making energy. So that's one job of insulin. And then we have glucagon, which does the opposite. When our blood sugar is low, the pancreas puts out glucagon, and it goes to signal the liver to break down something called glycogen, and then it basically dumps a whole flood of sugar into the bloodstream to remedy low blood sugar. So the other job of insulin, besides acting like a key, it also acts like a bit of a safe. So when we have a lot of insulin, it acts like a lock on our fat cells and doesn't let them open. It signals them to increase fat storage, and it also signals them to increase fat production. So our body always wants to maintain homeostasis. Homeostasis is even. We always want to be like this with our blood sugar. And when we're not, our insulin tries to fix the problem that's going on. So either if we have too much blood sugar in our bloodstream, more than our insulin can handle, that excess sugar goes to our liver. It's made into triglycerides and then packaged up and stored and sent away to the fat cells and stored as fat. So that is how sugar makes you fat. So just by decreasing the amount of sugar in our diet, we can lose weight. Reducing fat in our diet is not typically going to make us lose fat. So then there's another big word called insulin resistance. And insulin resistance, here's a slide. Insulin resistance, what happens is the key does not work. The insulin key does not work on the cells. Maybe it opens it just a little bit. You can get some of the sugar in, but not all. And so what ends up happening is the pancreas is signaled to keep putting out more and more and more insulin until that sugar goes into the cells. Either that or it gets packaged off by the liver and sent to the fat cells and stored as fat. So you can see how more insulin with insulin resistance makes us fatter quicker. So insulin resistance can be caused by different things. It can be caused by lack of exercise. Poor sleep makes us more insulin resistant. Just a poor diet makes us more insulin resistant. High sugar diet makes us more insulin resistant. Not something we want. So when we have insulin resistance, I just said this, but I'm just going to say it again. When we have insulin resistance, too much sugar is hanging out in our bloodstream for too long. Our body does not like that. It wants to be even, right? So when it's not even, that extra sugar gets turned into fat. So problems everywhere. Now we have the result of insulin resistance. The result of insulin resistance is that we get infertility. We get PCOS. PCOS is the most common cause of infertility in women. And it's a blood sugar problem. And we spend so much money getting IVF and doing IUI and doing all these other, taking fertility drugs. And when things may actually just be able to be fixed by changing our diet and maybe taking some supplements. The problem is most people don't really know to look there. So it is commonly known that PCOS is caused by insulin resistance, but the solution largely is to take diabetic drugs, and sometimes may help the problem, but ultimately it's not fixing the problem. It's just suppressing something that's going on. So we also, besides infertility, we have, I could give you the medical term for it, but I think the term that everybody else knows is man boobs. So men will have an increase in estrogen because of insulin surges and insulin resistance, and they end up growing fatty tissue in their breast area. We also get fat in our for men, the beer belly, or for the women, you can call it an apple body, or I just have noticed how more and more women are looking like they're pregnant as they get older. And some are still of childbearing age that look like that, and they just don't know what to do. And so my job is to educate, and if you spread the word, more people will understand. Teach them the 4 grams of sugar as a teaspoon, it'll go a long way. So high blood sugar can result from insulin resistance, and we end up getting diabetes, high blood pressure, and as I mentioned before, when you have your insulin levels go down, you dump a lot of water weight. So what happens when you dump the water weight? The pressure in your vessels goes down, and so does your blood pressure. So high-fat diets, lowering your blood sugar, can help with heart disease as well. Another thing I mentioned last week is that high cholesterol and triglycerides. Triglycerides are a direct measure of elevated blood sugar, and high cholesterol comes next. So first the triglycerides go up, the LDLs go up, and then the HDLs come down. So 2 things there that are directly related to heart disease, or we could just say are heart disease, high blood pressure and high cholesterol. Although high cholesterol is not the connection to heart disease that we think it is. There are things that are more pertinent than high cholesterol. And anyway, I could go off on a tangent, but I won't right now. And then we have high blood pressure, high blood sugar causing diabetes, and we have low blood sugar or hypoglycemia causing anxiety. And both of these combinations, they can both cause fatigue and they can both cause insomnia. So all kinds of problems caused by insulin resistance. And insulin resistance, if we look at a little graph, it looks like this. So we see the blood sugar going up and down and up and down. There's no line for the insulin there, but it would follow going up and down and up and down. And even keel is what we want. We don't want a roller coaster. Roller coasters are fun and exciting, but not good for our health. So go to the amusement park. Don't do it in your blood. A couple of things that will help to lower insulin resistance are to sleep 8 hours a day. One of the things that they have found, and multiple studies have shown this, is that when we are sleeping less than 6 hours a night, we weigh 5 to 15 pounds more than the person who sleeps more. So I always recommend 8 hours of sleep. I know some people think sleep is optional, but it really is necessary. Sleep, your body repairs things when you sleep. So if you want to age better, you need time to repair things. So just by sleeping more, you can improve your insulin resistance and you can lose weight by doing nothing else but sleeping. Another thing that is highly associated with insulin resistance is exercise. So exercising more, and actually the best thing to help with insulin resistance is high intensity intermittent exercise. So that looks like, and you can look it up, you can Google that, it's HIIT. Actually, HII, anyway, high intensity intermittent exercise, HIIE. And what that looks like is exercising intensely for 3 to 5 minutes. You get your blood rate or your heart rate up to 70% of your total capacity. And the calculation for that is 220 minus your age times 0.7. So you want to get your blood, or you want to get your heart rate just above that and keep it there for at least 3 minutes. And that will help with insulin resistance. And so you'd want to do that several times a day. It's a great thing to do to reset your cortisol rhythms right when you wake up or within 20 minutes of waking up. And do it again. You can do it at work. Maybe if you have your own office, maybe if you have a cube, you can try and get other people in the cubes to do it with you. But that is something that helps immensely with insulin resistance. And sitting for long periods of time is not good for insulin resistance, not good for circulation, not good for all kinds of things. So getting up and walking around, it's important to do things like that. So lowering insulin and improving sensitivity to insulin. One of the easiest ways to change that is to reduce your carbohydrates. And just by changing what you eat, and as you can see from last week's homework, changing the times that you eat, you can change the way your body functions, and all kinds of things will improve. So next I want to talk about tracking your progress. We have, and I'm just going to give you a heads up. After I talk about this, I'm going to stop the video and start it again. We are going to share the first portion of the video. The homework I'm going to keep in the private Facebook group for you. And if there are people who've watched the first 2 videos and they are interested in more, then they can sign up for the class. So we have tracking your progress. I'm giving you a few handouts to help with this. And I like paper. As you can see, I've actually written all my slides out on these. Sometimes easier than computers because you can lay everything out, you can rearrange things. So tracking your progress. I know some people started this last week, and if you haven't, you can start it this week, and some people haven't even started week 1 yet. So nothing lost. So 2 things we're going to track. We're going to track your weight, your fat percentage and body fat. That's as one thing, and I'll explain that in a second. And then we're also going to do a symptom tracker. So for your weight, and if you're looking at your handout, there's a calculation. I do this calculation all the time with my patients. I weigh them, and sometimes people will say, "Oh, that's so disappointing. I thought I lost weight. My clothes are fitting differently. I just knew I lost weight, and now I didn't, and now I'm so discouraged." And so what happens with that is half the time it's not actually true that you didn't lose weight. Your net weight may not have changed, but your actual weight may have changed, or your total weight may have changed, or the other way around. Your total weight may not have changed, but the weight, your fat ratio to muscle ratio may have changed. So what we do is I weigh you, or you weigh yourself in this case, and you calculate your body fat percentage. I'm giving links to a couple of good scales online that you can get. If you have a scale that you like that doesn't calculate fat, we have another product that's great, something I've actually been using for 10 years to measure fat, and it's incredible how accurate it is actually. One of the things to know is that when you use these trackers for fat percentage, you have to be very well hydrated, because when you aren't, they can make you look fatter, because it's a current going through your body, and things move quicker through water than they do through muscle. And so if you're dehydrated, it doesn't bode well for you. So make sure you're hydrated when you measure your fat percentage. Some of you already ordered the fat monitors from us last week. If you don't have a fat monitor, you can either get one. We have the link. We have the link in the Facebook group, and or you can order a new scale that has it on there for you. And so I've uploaded just a sheet for you to write your weight each week, write your body fat percentage, and then a space for you to do the calculation of the total body fat. So say you weigh 150 pounds and you're 30% fat, and you have, you may end up calculating, and I'm just saying a number. This is not any calculation that I've done. Say you have 50 pounds of body fat, and then next week you weigh 145, but you have 40 pounds of body fat. So what changed? The net change was only 5 pounds, but the fat change was 10 pounds. So it's important to be able to see these differences, because it can be very discouraging when you don't see what you think is happening, what you know is happening. So use that calculation to figure that out. And then the next thing is a symptom tracker. So when I take notes with people when they're sitting in my office, I'm very anal, and I ask tons of questions, because I always want to know every single symptom that's going on. I start with the first visit, and then even by the second visit, a lot of the times several or many symptoms have already gone away, and I will ask the person how they're doing, and they say, oh, I'm fine, not much has changed. And then when I start asking questions, they'll realize that actually a lot has changed. And the thing is, we forget very quickly when we're feeling better how bad we actually felt. So it's good for you to do a symptom tracker. And what I suggest is for you to do it at least the 1st and the 10th week. And in the symptom tracker, there's all kinds of symptoms listed. So check the boxes that are there. Make copies so that you can check in the different weeks. And if you want to do it every week, that works too. And then beside each box that you've checked, I suggest that you write the severity of the symptoms. So say you have headaches, write 5 out of 10 for pain, and then you can write 1 time a week. And if you write the details, then you'll have more to gauge. You have more to go on rather than just the 5 out of 10, or because you probably don't have a headache all the time, but when you get a headache, it's 5 out of 10. You can tell how often. Maybe it's less frequent, maybe it's less severe. So knowing those numbers can be really helpful. So this is where I'm going to stop the video, and I will start it again in a minute, and we'll talk about your homework. So I'll see you on the other side.